this is Liz from People I Think Are Cool, a bi-weekly podcast where I interview my favorite creatives from across the globe. If you're looking for a dose of creative inspiration, then go to peopleithinkarecool.com or subscribe to People I Think Are Cool on iTunes and Stitcher.
You like film, from cult to classic, from blockbuster to B-movies. And there just isn't that one place with all the fan fervor and passion that's covering the kind of mad, diverse brilliance that you love.
Well, that's where you're wrong.
AfterMovieDiner.com is that fan-built movie nirvana just for you, featuring the sweet, sweet writings of the wife dork herself. AfterMovieDiner.com. Go there. Be the best you can be.
You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast, the official podcast of the Alamo Drafthouse, Winchester.
Welcome to another edition of the It Podcast. Joining us is Brian Young, the Turtle Dork.
Happy Friday, folks.
And also joining us is Billy Das, the Indie Dork.
What's up, everybody?
Yep. And I'm your host, Darren Smith, the Disco Dork. And welcome to another edition of the It Podcast. Fistful Friday. TGIFF, MFers. How's everyone doing this Friday?
Not too bad. A little cold. Not it.
It is chilly. Right? Tis the season. It is December, right?
It is.
You guys aren't going to be bothered if I do this in my parka, are you? With just the hoodie pulled up, just so I can see like Kenny from South Park.
No, I would. It would be totally understandable given our current environmental circumstances.
I know, right?
This Friday, in honor of the release of Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, we have a Fistful of Mentors. If you have seen the trailer, you may or may not know that in that film, Peter Parker is sort of a mentor to Miles Morales as he navigates the world of becoming a superhero, specifically one bitten by a radioactive spider. So in honor of that film, which is amazing, pun intended, we have a Fistful of Mentors. So start us off, B. It's two B's. As always. Well, normally it's three B's, but B1. Start us off with your number 5.
So my number 5, I'm looking at my list here and I'm trying to put them all in order, but I think what I'm going to go with number 5 is, it should be no surprise, again, as I always say, due to my moniker, my name, it would be Splinter and the Turtles. I know a lot of my listeners will be asking, our listeners, will be asking, why number 5? Well, there is a reason for that, because although I am the Turtle Dork, there are other mentors and other pairings that I like a lot more, that resonate a little bit more. But with that being said, Splinter and the Turtles is an important one, especially with the training that Splinter gives the Turtles, not just in their fight and their martial art, but in also just giving them life lessons, specifically, especially in the 1990 version of the movie, with Splinter and how he mentors Raphael to be able to control his anger, to not be so angry. And you can really see how those 4 turtles have to rally around, especially after Splinter gets captured by the Foot Clan. And basically their whole mission is to get their sensei back, is to rescue their sensei because of the importance of what Splinter means to them. And I think that's always been the case throughout every iteration of the Turtles, is the importance of family and the father figure that Splinter plays in their lives. Even in the Michael Bay produced films, we see that to a degree. Because so that's always a pivotal part of their relationship, is that mentorship that Splinter gives them, to really keep that core group together. Because we also see how without his leadership and his guidance, that they don't always stick together as a team. Even though they are brothers and they have loyalty to each other, they don't always work well. So they need that leadership and that guidance from someone like Splinter to be able, especially because they're teenagers. I mean, that's how teenagers are. Yeah. So you need that leadership from them for them to be able to have that family dynamic. So that's a great mentorship for me, as a Splinter.
All right, Billy, you're number 5.
All right, so much like Brian, I am going to betray my handle as the indie dork. And I am going to go all the way back to a blockbuster hit from 1993 starring Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes, and Sandra Bullock. And my mentor for my number 5 pick is going to be Sylvester Stallone's John Spartan. Now, I mean, I guess really it could have gone either way, because I don't know who ultimately teaches John Spartan how to use the 3 seashells, so maybe he needs to be a mentee somewhere in the future. But no, so, you know, Demolition Man, John Spartan is a man out of time. He is like the quintessential 80s cop on a mission, willing to destroy and fight and blow shit up as he goes about his business. And at the very beginning of the movie, he gets put in cryogenic stasis and wakes up, I don't know, it's like 30 years in the future or something like that. Okay. Some amount of time in the future, and America has changed. Everybody has been pacified. Taco Bell rules the eatery establishments of the United States. Nobody swears, nobody fights, there's no crime, there's no nothing. Sandra Bullock, I don't know why I blanked on her name. Sandra Bullock is a police officer in the new LA police force, and she is very much like everybody else. Also brought to the future is Wesley Snipes' character, Simon Phoenix, who shows up to fuck shit up. And he fucks some shit up big time. And they don't know how to do it. And so Sandra Bullock is a bit out of her element, and she has to look to John Spartan and find a way to fight crime from the late 20th century. So I think for my number 5 pick, John Spartan is my mentor of choice.
There you go.
All right. That's a great pick. For my number 5, I'm going with something recent. Only because I really find that the dynamic between the two, the mentor and the mentee, very interesting. And it's a dynamic turn and shift that you see in other films like Star Wars. But these two people is Ben and Adam from Body. Adam is a college student who has taken interest in the world of underground battle rap, and Ben, aka Ben Grimm, aka Osiris, is a battle rapper. It happens to be Adam's favorite battle rapper, and Adam wants to do a thesis paper on battle rap and the use of the N-word specifically in battle rap, but also just the dialogue within that culture. He's fascinated by it, and he inadvertently becomes enveloped in that world. He becomes a part of it, and by a part of it I mean he actually becomes a battle rapper. And he goes to Ben Grimm for guidance and tutelage. And how I likened it to Star Wars is that by the end of the film, spoiler alert by everybody, but by the end of the film, the mentee will have to face his mentor, not only in verbal combat, but in a battle of ethics and moral code, so to speak. And I find that confrontation infinitely more interesting than when they're standing in front of each other, reciting their bars that they wrote down for the rap battle. I find the conversation afterwards at the bar, the conversation beforehand or in the hallway in shaking hands before the battle, I find those two conversations infinitely more fascinating because they set up two different points of where Adam starts and where he ends, and he's a drastically different person, as you should be when you are under the tutelage of someone or anything. You should be different when you come out of it. You should have learned more. You should have gained new perspective, new knowledge, and thus are a new person. But as this movie shows, as Anakin has shown you, like, this new person can also be an asshole or intergalactic asshole. And that's sort of the ebb and flow, right? That's sort of what goes on in Star Wars, and it kind of happens in Body. And but I find it fascinating though. I've been thinking about that aspect of the movie a lot more than the rap battles and the lyrics and the performances that were in there. And I'm a huge fan of battle rap. And when I watch actual live rap battles, those are the things I focus on. I focus on what someone's saying, the angles that they're using, the schemes, the wordplay, how many syllables they cram it into the bars, if they're unorthodox with their bar usage and stuff like that. Those are the things I pay attention to watching rap battles. But in this film, and rightfully so, as one should, I'm more focused on the characters and their development and their growth, and their confrontation. So that's got to be my number 5, because I just find that dynamic between the mentor and the mentee really strong. So yeah, B, your number 4.
So my number 4 is going to go to one that we talked about prior to recording, is Kill Bill. I'm going to go with, there's a couple of different mentors and mentees. I'm specifically going to focus on Pai Mei. Pai Mei and the Bride. Pai Mei is trained her in her martial arts skills, and he put her through some grueling and rigorous training, really breaking her down to build her back up to the point where she couldn't even hold her chopsticks to eat the rice, and he would never allow her to eat rice with her hands. No matter how bruised and battered her hands were, he forced her, you're going to use these chopsticks to eat the rice. Right. And just the portrayal of that character played by Gordon Liu, he played that character before, if I'm correct.
Gordon Liu has fought
that's right.
Master Killer has fought Pai Mei, played by Lo Lee on multiple occasions in a bunch of films. But that's what it is. It's still cool that he's playing a character he's fought against as in old martial arts movies. But yeah,
exactly. And the interesting thing, and this is one of the reasons why Kill Bill is one of my favorite. Is my favorite Tarantino film, is how layered these characters are and the backstory of these characters. When we see, and spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen Kill Bill Volume 1 or 2, but when Beatrix Kiddo kills Bill,
it's in the title.
Yes. She uses the 5-point palm exploding heart technique. And Pai Mei has never shown anybody this technique, at least from what Bill's understanding. So when he inevitably falls to the 5-point palm exploding heart technique, we see that Pai Mei did teach her this move. And knowing the character of Bill, it makes me as an audience member think to myself, what is the history between Pai Mei and Bill for him to teach Beatrix this move,
this forbidden
technique that would ultimately kill Bill. So it's interesting just to find out a lot, and this is stuff that is not in the film, but you can definitely see that Tarantino has put this stuff on the page, and this is part of the history of these characters. And it's just so fascinating to me to just learn more about the character of Bill through the history of these other characters like Pai Mei and Esteban and all these other characters that we know. So I just think that relationship, that tough love relationship that Pai Mei had towards Beatrix Kiddo, and ultimately how it did strengthen her as a character, is really what makes that mentor-mentee relationship just so fulfilling and so satisfying. So yeah, that's my number 4, is Pai Mei.
Billy, your number 4.
All right, so for my number 4, I'm going to go even further back in time to 1984. It's a movie directed by Nick Castle, starring wait, I forget the name. Starring Lance Guest and Robert Preston as Alex Rogan and Centauri, called The Last Starfighter.
Okay.
So this mentor-mentee relationship is interesting to me because Centauri, if I recall correctly, Centauri creates the video game that he puts out on Earth that Alex winds up playing at home.
It's a training program.
It's a training simulator,
Whoever
right?
does well at this game, they can obviously pilot our ships. Yeah.
Right. And so Centauri has trained Alex to get ready to fight Zur and the Kodan Armada.
Time out. Yeah. Before you go, that is a badass concept.
Right?
If you think about that,
yes.
That's a badass concept. By the way, aliens, if you see my Call of Duty score, I'm just saying.
All right. I mean, look, if you're really great at first-person shooter games, then it seems pretty awesome. But me, I'm never getting picked to go fight the Kodan Armada.
I was saying with Billy.
Hard no. Hard no for me.
Oh man.
Y'all got Tetris enemies up there. Y'all got Pong enemies. Billy's your man.
I mean, riddles or wordplay? Probably still somebody else.
Friends with words?
I know, right?
Enemies with words out there? Billy's your man. Sorry, Billy. You digress. I digress.
So I think one of the important things that mentors do, aside from training their mentees to prepare them for whatever it is that they're supposed to undertake, at some point they pull out the training wheels and they put them in the position where they have to stand up and they have to stand on their own. And so for the last Starfighter, Centauri goes down and introduces himself to Alex, says, hey, look, I'm the guy who's been training you to fight the Codan Armada. You're top shit. We're going to bring you out. You're going to fight. It's going to be great. Alex is pretty reluctant, and Centauri rigs it so that he winds up in a space fighter fighting the Codan Armada. And then it puts him in a position where he has to fight or die, and he has to put his skills into practice in that moment. And Centauri knows that he's got the skills to get the job done. Alex doesn't have the faith in himself to do it. So being put in that sink or swim moment gives Alex the faith that he needs in himself to push forward with the rest of the things that he needs to undertake. And I think that's a really key part of the mentor-mentee relationship. Nice. So that is my number 4 pick.
That sounds like a hell of a because I know they're thinking about remaking that film.
I think that they've agreed to remake it, and I think that they're in the process of setting up a script. But I'm not sure if that's
hopefully they stay faithful because that's a hell of a concept.
No, it is.
Man. Look, I play Eve Valkyrie online too. That's a VR flight alien spaceship simulator. Dude, I'm talking about 360-degree movement
All
in space.
I'm saying is anytime that you're in a flight simulator, especially a spespaceship flight simulator, you should have in the back of your head,
this shit could be...
maybe this is an alien training simulator.
Logging in tonight, Jack.
I'm going to save the galaxy.
Save the galaxy. All right. My number 4 actually is a counterpoint to Brian's pick. I'm going to also go with Kill Bill because, as Brian mentioned, there are several mentor-mentee relationships in that film. But I'm going to go with the relationship between Bill and Beatrix because it's almost the antithesis to his relationship with the mentorship between the bride, Beatrix, and Pai Mei. Whereas that mentorship, even though, like you described it, Brian, as tough love, seemed like really cruel and rigorous, it benefited her and she grew from it. Whereas Bill's mentor-mentee relationship with the bride would become toxic to the point where the mentor ends up murdering the pregnant mentee that he was about to marry.
Exactly.
And
Bill's a dick.
A super dick. He's and I don't know, like I find that, that being a catalyst for Beatrix to send her on this road is what ultimately led her to Pai Mei.
True.
And had that not happened, then, would she have been reunited with her daughter and a whole other chain of events? But I also find interesting the mentor-mentee relationship that potentially they could have had with the other Deadly Vipers.
Oh, Bill.
Between Bill and the other Vipers. Like, you have mentioned, Brian, about how even though there were some things that weren't on the film, you can tell that they were on the page. You have to know that somewhere there are stacks of papers that has the history of the Vipers, the Deadly Vipers, and Bill, like missions they went on, things he taught them, and things like that. And so I found it interesting because, and I know where there's a mentor-mentee relationship there with those other Vipers because Bill is able to use them and manipulate them to go after Beatrix.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
That fails, obviously, ultimately. Yeah. But I find that very interesting in how you have a toxic mentor. You look at something like friggin' Karate Kid, Cobra Kai, right? You on one end you have Mr. Miyagi, your Pai Mei, like a very nice Pai Mei. On the other hand, you have I can't remember the guy's name from the Cobra Kai guy, but you have that guy.
Fucking sweep the leg, dude. What's his name?
And you have him he's poisoning his students and not teaching them correctly, and ultimately is their downfall.
Exactly.
Right? And so that is, I think it's a similar case with in Kill Bill, in that Bill was not a good mentor. It would cause, the bride much anguish and sorrow, and he attempted to kill her, but it would also ultimately become his downfall because that would push her to, you know, become even better than her. And then there's that where the student, you know, supersedes the teacher. And so, I find that dynamic extremely interesting. And I would kill for more insight into their relationship, not even in film form, but just to read like what Tarantino has as notes and a novelization of it.
Who knows,
it'd be crazy.
Who knows?
But
we might get that.
Especially with him talking about he's going to be no longer directing soon, but into writing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I would pay for that. But that's my number 4. Bill and Beatrix.
Okay.
All right, B, you're number 3. That rhymed.
So my number 3, I'm gonna go to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's going to be a mentor-mentee that maybe most people aren't thinking of. I'm going to go to Captain America, the First Avenger. This is Stanley Tucci's Dr. Abraham Erskine and young Steve Rogers pre-serum.
Brad just went, oh, that's a good pick.
That is a good pick.
I know.
Yeah.
It's funny, like, earlier this year, we did a rewatch of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was supposed to be a movie a week leading up to Infinity War.
Yep.
And during that time, I was ranking all the MCU films. And after watching Captain America, the First Avenger, that movie, and even now, still ranks pretty high to me because, to me, I think that's a movie that kind of gets lost in these 20 films of the cinematic universe. But that is a really, really strong film, and I think a lot of that is due to the character of Steve Rogers, but it's also what Dr. Erskine has instilled in him, letting him know that your strength is not something that is physical. It's your heart. It's who you are inside that is going to make you. It is the reason why we are choosing you for this super serum project. And it's that moment when they have that drink, when they're in the barracks right before the day that he has the super serum get injected into him, that really stands out. And you see how much Steve Rogers really responds to what Dr. Erskine is telling him, to the point that when things go haywire and he gets shot and killed, like, that is what kind of propel Steve Rogers to go after these Nazis and to go chase them down because of what Dr. Erskine meant to Steve Rogers. And it's just that relationship between the two of them, and letting him know that it's not the physicality, but it's your heart. That is what makes you strong. And I think that's a lesson that we all can kind of like learn from, and you definitely see how Steve Rogers.
And that's a unique mentorship, and to have, because it has such a profound impact on Steve in such a short period of time, because he doesn't know him that long. He doesn't. You don't get a montage sequence of him working with him and inspiring him and saying stuff to him all the time, or him seeing him do things and being inspired by that. Yeah, it's really a short period of time that that they know each other, but it has a lasting impact that still reverberates through the MCU
to this day. To this day. And I think we're going to see all that stuff come full circle with Endgame.
Jesus, also, I'm sorry if this is on your list, if I'm spoiling, but that also kind of mirrors Tony in The Cave.
Yeah, it does.
Shit, I never thought of that till just now.
That's absolutely right. I can't remember the gentleman's name.
What's his name in The Cave?
In the cave. The doctor guy,
Yeah, because that is ultimately what pushes Tony to the position where he is, to create the Iron Man suit and to be who he is now.
And what he said and what that doctor said to him. Yeah. His lasting words. Like, it kind of mirrors what went down with Cap. Yeah, and it goes to the whole MCU that these are the two characters that are the pillars of this universe, of this era of this universe. And just to see how all this kind of comes together, really just planting these seeds, even early on, with just these small moments, and how they're going to resonate so impactfully as we come to the conclusion of this era of the MCU. It's going to be crazy. Yeah. I know. 10 years, man. It's a long time. You're fucking old, that's what it is. Yeah, I know, right? I know. Can you imagine an 8-year-old when it first started? They're 18 now. They can vote now. Yeah. Nuts. That's so crazy. Because I'm thinking that, because like being an adult, I don't think about it, because time is kind of, You hit like 28, 29, 30, and I feel like everything from there is just a time warp. Yeah. Like everything is steady state, just... Yeah, so basically I was 30 when the MCU started, and now I'm 40. It's like, okay,
But like somebody was 5 and they're 15, or they were 11 and they're 21.
Yeah.
It's like,
Or they weren't even born. Now they're here.
Oh yeah, like Claire.
wild.
Claire
Yeah.
is 9, and she's a huge fan of the MCU, and she was not born in 2008 when this started.
That's wild. That's crazy.
All right.
Nuts.
B, you're number 3.
All right, so I think that's a great pick for mentors that are great. But not all mentors are great.
No.
So I'm going to go to Brian De Palma's 1996 movie Mission Impossible.
Okay.
And my pick is the mentor-mentee relationship between Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt and Jon Voight's Jim Phelps.
Yep.
At the beginning of that movie, it is obvious that Phelps has been grooming Ethan Hunt and teaching him all the things that he knows, and they have a very, very close working relationship with an immense amount of respect. And even as Ethan Hunt is embracing his continued aspect as their leader, Phelps is working to undermine the entire mission and just fucking kill everyone. And I think a major part of what makes Mission Impossible an interesting movie is watching Ethan Hunt come to terms with the fact that the world that he lives in is not populated with people that he can trust.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that they director hop, which I think is a good feature of the series for the rest of the movies, I think that core issue with trust and dependability is something that isn't just that he wrestles with for that movie and then moves on to the next thing. It's something that defines Ethan Hunt's approach to everything, all the way through to Mission Impossible Fallout.
Yeah.
So I think even though mentor-mentee relationships can go very wrong, you can definitely still take away things from that. And no matter what, whether your mentor is good or bad, they will definitely leave a mark on you for the rest of your life.
It's interesting too because you can also see character-wise how it shapes Ethan Hunt as far as how loyal he is, especially in Fallout, that how loyal he is to his team. And you can really attribute that back to what you were saying of how he learns the corruption within the system that he's in, which he's like, okay, I'm going to do something different and I'm going to be loyal, even if it's to a degree where it causes the fate of,
Well, he chooses Ving Rhames over basically humanity in that moment, which it's impossible to separate that from Phelps's betrayal all the way at the beginning of the franchise.
Exactly. Yeah. That's interesting.
All right, my number 3. I just mentioned this movie a moment ago. It is not really the movie or the character specifically, but it is the actor. It is Pat Morita as Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid. You've seen the movies, so you know the relationship between those characters. You know the mentor-mentee, wax on, wax off relationship between those characters. But I just want to... he popped up in my head because specifically, when he popped up in my head, it was the scene where he's drunk and you discover the tragic story of between him and his wife and what happened. And I'm one of those people that when there's a character in a movie who's drunk, for me, that's really thin ice as far as an audience member, because if you don't play that right, to me, it's distracting. It's someone who's acting like they're drunk, right? But at the same time, I'm not saying you have to just go whole hog and just be, you don't have to do method and to make me think. But I would say Pat Morita does a perfect job of portraying someone who's under the influence, who may have drank a little too much sake, but because of that, it allows him a moment to be extremely vulnerable and put all of his pain out for Daniel and us to see. And the way that Pat Morita does that was so incredibly satisfying, but at the same time so sad. You know, when you see a good person go through something or experience pain or, not be well off, for me personally, I feel an extra layer of empathy and or sympathy, because in my mind I'm going, that guy doesn't deserve that. That guy only deserves the best. Like, Mr. Miyagi seems like the sweetest dude in the world. That's because he is. But behind that, there's a lot of pain. But that only goes to reinforce his character, in that there is someone who is harboring so much pain and such emptiness. There's a hole in his heart because of that, the loss of his wife. Yet, he is still able to be a good person to other people. And I just find that infinitely profound. I mean, to that, so much so where I try my hardest, if I'm having a bad day or if I'm going through something, my own shit, to still be a good person to other people. I'm of the school that just because you're going through some shit, because your day's fucked up, doesn't mean that you can't make somebody else's day well or better, or still be of help to someone. Because you look at what that means to that person. You look at what that means for Mr. Miyagi. Like, you're able to put aside your pain to focus on this young man's well-being. You care that much about this kid that you just met. You don't even really know him that well, but you care enough about another human being that you're willing to put aside your pain to enrich this person's life. Man, if we had half the people on this planet doing that, we'd be in a utopia right now compared to where we are. And yeah, it's a corny movie thing or whatever, but it's something that is so applicable today that we could use so much. And again, I try to do that all the time. And sometimes I may fall short. My moods, my emotions, my anger may get the best of me, but it is never lost on me that there is another way, Darren. You're having a bad day, but you don't know what this guy's day has been. He's coming up to you. He may have an attitude as he checks in for his appointment, but you don't know what phone call he just got from a relative or from a job or for a diagnosis. He might be coming in to talk about his labs that came back that says he has something bad. I don't know what his story is. So still, let me be a good person to him, because just because you're going through a bad day doesn't mean you can't be a bright day for somebody, a bright spot in someone else's day. And, Mr. Miyagi exemplified that. And he was able to pass his teaching on and pass that. If you're going to be a mentor, it goes beyond just, all right, I'm teaching you this move. A mentee looks at the mentor, everything they do from when you walk in the dojo to when you leave, not just the moves that you're showing them, but you're looking how they interact with other students. You're looking at how they interact with other guests, how they carry themselves. You're looking at how other people respond and interact and respect or not respect that person. And you base yourself and your character off that. Your kids do it. My daughter does it. Your daughter does it, Billy.
Oh, sure.
If you're, not only is Mr. Miyagi imparting martial arts knowledge and technique to Daniel, he's also imparting how to be a good person. And that is infinitely more valuable in the world than any type of fucking spin kick or crane kick or sweep the leg or whatever. And so, and you see that in the film, because the Cobra Kai students didn't have that. Yeah, they had the martial arts, they had the skills and the technique, but they didn't have core values. They didn't have someone with a genuine personality, character, and decent human being teaching them how to be decent people.
But that's what I love about Kreese. Kreese is that dude's name.
Kreese, yes.
Is that it's the comparison that gets drawn between him and Mr. Miyagi is that both of them are coming from a place of injury, because the Kreese is a special forces guy, a Vietnam veteran, and so he's definitely seen some shit that has messed him up in his life. And it's both of these mentors, their approach is, like you were saying, Miyagi's is defined by how can I make somebody else's life good regardless of what's going on in mine, and Kreese doesn't have a handle on it in that way. He's consumed by the grief that's following him around. It bums me out that Karate Kid gets remembered most for the wax on, wax off quote, because it's a really fucking good movie.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that's got to be my pick. For my number 3. All right, Brian, your number 2.
Number 2 for me kind of goes to a movie I talk about a lot, which is Creed. It's the mentor relationship between Rocky Balboa and Adonis Creed, I guess you could say, throughout now the course of these 2 films. But really, specifically focusing on Creed 1, the relationship between Adonis and Creed, I think, comes from a place where they both are void of something that they're missing in their lives. I mean, Rocky is at a point in his life where he's old man Rocky now. He's lost Adrian. He's lost Paulie, and he's feeding his turtles.
He's lost his son too.
Yeah, lost his son, who's left because his son couldn't handle the pressures of being Rocky Balboa's son in the city of Philadelphia. And he's sitting there, he spends time at the cemetery, spending time with Adrian. You really see that love that he still has for his wife. And in comes his kid, Adonis, who has a lot of anger issues. He's an angry kid because he's grown up in the foster system. He doesn't know his father, but Apollo's wife comes in and takes him under his wing, ends up raising him. He becomes a fighter himself, and the relationship that he has with Rocky, I think, is something where he needs that father figure in his life that he felt like he was missing, and it also gives Rocky a purpose at that stage of his life that gives him a family that has kind of gone away from him at that moment. So I think they find solace in each other, and then also just being able to train him and teach him some of the life lessons that they've had, that Rocky has had, that he could impart onto Adonis and really try to channel that kind of like that rage and that anger that he has into being the fighter that he knows that he can be. I think it's just something, and then also dealing with the cancer aspect of it in the first film, and really seeing that the relationship develop outside of the ring, that they really do start to care for each other, and it really just parallels that mentor relationship that Rocky had with Mickey in the first couple of films. You see that with Adonis and Rocky's character, and also just how that goes into the second film. These characters, it's not all peaches and cream and roses and all this other stuff. They have their ups and downs. They fight. They have disagreements. But at the end of the day, Adonis knows that Rocky has the best interest for him. And I think that ultimately is why he is succeeding at not just his profession as a boxer, but being a good man, being now a good father and a good husband to Bianca and to their daughter, and just to see where that goes. It's just, I love that relationship between the two of them. So
some people might say, "Oh man, how can you have that and not have Rocky and Mickey, or Mickey and Rocky?" I will argue that the mentor-mentee relationship between Rocky and Adonis, at very least in my opinion, to me, is more compelling than the relationship between Mickey and Rocky, because when we see Mickey and Rock together, and Mickey's imparting his wisdom, or he's snapping at Rocky, we just take at face value that Mickey knows what he's talking about, because he's a grizzled old guy, and you just know old people know shit, right? Because they've seen everything, right? So you just know, all right, Rocky, you got to listen to him, because he respect your elders. Mickey's been around the block, he knows shit. He's old, right? But with Rocky and Adonis, when Rocky imparts knowledge on Adonis, for me, it's more compelling because I've seen Rocky live the advice he's giving Adonis through the movies. Like everything that he's learned through those movies, that's what he's telling Adonis.
Exactly.
But I have a frame of reference for that advice. Not just, you got to keep going around, you got to find the eye of the tiger. Well, I know why. I've seen, like, Mickey doesn't explain why you have to, or because I went through this, so so I'm making sure you don't have to go through, you got to do it this way. Mickey doesn't go into depth. We don't go into depth about Mickey's accumulation of this knowledge and experience, but through the previous films in the Rocky franchise, we get that. We get the backstory of the advice that Rocky is imparting, the wisdom that Rocky is imparting on Adonis. So it holds more weight to me, because I've seen, if you don't listen to Adonis, I've seen what can happen, right? Yeah. So it's almost, it's like saying Mickey could say, Rocky, you better do it this way, because if not, I've seen what could happen, and then cut to montage. Well, what could happen, Mickey? Well, we've seen what can happen if Rocky doesn't take heed to what, if Adonis doesn't take heed to what Rocky is saying. You don't want to end up in Rocky's shoes. And it goes beyond Rocky just saying, you don't want to end up like me, kid. Well, yeah, we see the end result, but we also saw how you got here, Rocky. So yeah, Adonis, listen to this dude.
And it's interesting too, because also just how the dynamics of both of those relationships originated. Because if you think back, and I'm thinking about the first Rocky film, like he gets the fight against Apollo, and then Mickey comes to Rocky to try to train him. But Mickey, before he takes that fight with Apollo, Mickey has kind of turned his back on Rocky. He wouldn't train him, but now since he sees that Rock has this opportunity, it's like, yeah, let me see if I can train you. And Rocky has that great scene where he's like, he's at the top of the stairs and he's like yelling at Mickey who's outside, and gives a great performance. But with Creed, like Creed comes to Rocky at a point in his life where Rocky is not looking to get into boxing, and he even tells Adonis, he's like, look, I had different plans for my life before you came in, wanting me to train you. But if this is something you want to do, and also not necessarily the guilt of what happened to Apollo, but I feel like Rocky does feel some responsibility, especially if this kid wants to become a fighter. So I just think that just how he became his trainer was a little bit different, where he was a little bit more reluctant, where it seems like Mickey almost just kind of saw like the stars, where it's like, oh, this is a great opportunity for me to just, get on with Rocky because of this high profile fight with Apollo. Whereas this one was just like, well, okay, if this is something you want to do, let me take you under your wing and show you how you need to do this. So it's a little bit different in that. And Mickey's still a great character.
Oh, yeah, I'm not taking anything away
it's
from
not a knock against Mickey, but it's just the dynamics of how their relationships originated.
Mickey could never compete against Rocky. I mean, that's what makes the franchise so special, is to see Stallone stay in the same role from the time when he's a young kid all the way until the point where he is actually mentor age. Like, that's totally...
I know.
That's totally unique. I really can't think of anything that fits that profile. Where, because imagine if you had not seen any of the Rocky movies, and then you go and you watch Creed, and there's your grizzled old man who's like, look, man, your life's going to be fucked up if you don't do these things. And you're
it's going to play like the first Rocky movie.
Right.
Oh, you just trust that guy because Stallone's old.
Right.
He's been in Expendables, a bunch of them, so I got to listen to that guy.
But this time you can go back and you can watch Rocky's life to the point that he's now imparting that wisdom. It's really fascinating, like creatively.
Yeah.
All right, B, you're number 1.
Wait, what? No, I'm on my number 2.
Oh, sorry, you're number 2.
B's number 2.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, my man.
B's number 2. Then D's number 2. And then D1 1. And then B2 1.
Gotcha.
And then D1.
Yeah. All right. So B2. 2. Go.
All right, so my number 2 pick, I'm going to go all the way back to 1985 with a little film directed by Martha Coolidge, starring Val Kilmer and Gabe Jarrett. Real Genius.
Yeah.
Okay.
Real Genius is like just flat out one of my all-time favorite movies. We just watched that earlier this year on the big
screen, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty common. Like once a year, they put it on the big screen. It's fucking amazing. I connect a lot with this movie, especially with Gabe Jarrett's character, Mitch Taylor, because he's like a total fish out of water. He's like way in over his head. He's not a dumb guy by any stretch, but like he literally is laserly focused on his academic career, and he really hasn't spent his time developing any other aspect of his life. And so I think he's like 15 or something like that in this movie.
Yeah.
He gets bumped into a college program where he's going to go and be sort of this wunderkind and do laser development for a professor and advance his coursework. And he has no capability to cope with the stress that's about to be put onto his life because he has no social skills. He has no outlet for it. And that is the value that Chris Knight plays in their mentor-mentee relationship. And it's played for laughs in that Chris Knight is this total flake almost in what he's trying to do. And he blows off the things that he doesn't give a shit about and he focuses on the thing that he does. But I think a core part to being successful in the long run in your life is managing your stress by understanding how to prioritize your focuses and not become constantly overrun by the anxiety associated with things that just don't rate on the priority list. That's something I struggle with in my everyday life and where to put my anxiety. But it's something I think because of my issues with anxiety that I'm very cognizant of when I'm becoming upset about something. It's like, does this thing really matter in the scope of things that I have to accomplish in like a hierarchical order? And thinking about things like that does kind of help me prioritize my my own focus, and it reduces the anxiety in my life. And I think that is something that Chris Knight is excellent at. Yeah. And, a lot of the outward fluff is cover for him. Like, he is definitely not a dumb guy. He understands what the priorities is. He absolutely understands when the guy's screwing him over. But he does his best to keep his center about him and focused on the things that matter. And I appreciate that dynamic quite a bit in that particular movie. So that's my number 2 pick.
Nice.
All right. My number 2 is from a movie that came out in the early aughts. I hate saying aughts. The 90s. I know, that's why I said, shout out to you. I did that for you. Hope you appreciate it.
You ought to say more aughts. I'm sorry.
It's a movie that I hope we can get for Still Awesome. And it is the mentor-mentee relationship between Joe Hollenbeck and Jimmy Dix and Tony Scott's The Last Boy Scout.
Nice.
Which I picked this one because it really doesn't even...
early 90s, man.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't even become... early 90s. It doesn't even become a mentor-mentee relationship until the very last scene, the closing moment between the two characters. Because Joe Hollenbeck, played by Bruce Willis, is a down on his luck private eye, as you would write if you were Shane Black. And then Jimmy Dix is this football quarterback who has fallen from grace due to drug use allegations and things like that, and gambling and all types of stuff. So they go on this crazy adventure to find the bad guys who were responsible for Jimmy Dix's his girl's death, as played by Halle Berry. And so he's basically hired Joe Hollenbeck to find the guy that killed his girlfriend. Jimmy Dix is he's a fish out of water. He's out of his element. He doesn't do like action movie shit. He's just a quarterback. He's just a football player, right? As played by Damon Wayans. Great performance. Anyway, and at the end of the film, after they get the bad guy, they're walking down the sidewalk, and there's a brief exchange where it's mentioned that, hey man, if you're gonna be my partner, if you're gonna get in on this, then you gotta start saying cool shit when you do stuff. Like if you're gonna hit a guy with a surfboard, you say something like, "Hey, surf's up, pal." Teaching him one eye, right? So in that moment, you go, "Oh shit, Jimmy Dix is gonna be a private eye with Joe Hollenbeck." Where's that movie? Where's My Last Boy Scout 2, where they're both PIs? But in those closing moments, that's what happens. Joe takes Jimmy under his wing. And which basically all those escapades leading up to that moment in the movie is basically Jimmy's crash course in the life of a PI if you're going to be hanging with Joe Hollenbeck. So it's kind of like his initiation, and so he survived. He passed the test, and so Joe's going to impart some wisdom on him, and they're going to go do PI work together. Which, again, where's that movie? That's so fascinating and fun to me. I want that movie. I love The Last Boy Scout. Yeah. Tony Scott shot the fuck out of that movie. I love that film. Yeah. Taylor Negron is amazing in it.
Halle Berry
is in it. Yeah. My man Tiggs from Sons of Anarchy. I can't remember his name now. Oh my gosh, he's drawing a blank. He's the one that got his nose pushed up into his brain when he says, "Touch me again, I'll kill you."
That's not Kim Coates, is it?
Kim Coates.
It is?
Kim Coates. That's him.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's Kim Coates. Billy Blanks is in the movie. Morris Chestnut has a cameo in the movie.
That's right.
That's right. Dude, the opening scene. Yeah.
So many people in that movie. I love that. Halle Berry is in it. She's the girlfriend.
Yeah.
Chelsea Fields is Joe Hollenbeck's wife. So that's a great cast. That's a great movie. I love that movie. I'm seriously going to see if I can get Andy to program that for Still Awesome. But yeah, that's my number 2. Joe Hollenbeck, Jimmy Dix, The Last Boy Scout. All right, B. Your number 1.
So my number 1, this is one of my favorite films of all time. I talked about it before. It's been a homework for Brad. It is Good Will Hunting. It is the mentor relationship between the therapist Sean, played brilliantly by Robin Williams, and Matt Damon's Will Hunting. I absolutely just love this movie. And the thing about this mentor-mentee relationship that I love is that even though Sean plays a therapist, he's a broken man because of the loss of his wife. And Will Hunting, who is a disconnected person, who pushes people away. He's brilliant. He's a genius, but he doesn't really recognize that, or really is not trying to harness that part of him that he has. And it's really about these two people who are disconnected, trying to reconnect to the world, and they find that through each other. And just Robin Williams, man, in this movie, just the performance, how nuanced and how somber he delivers his lines, and the relationship that he has with Will Hunting, to really get him to kind of just understand, because he's a character who is this way because of the loss of his wife. Will Hunting is the way that he is because of the abuse that he suffered as a child. But how he, again, we talked about before, how he imparts wisdom because him being an older man and going through, especially like talking about the things as far as like the first date with his wife, because Will Hunting is kind of going through a certain type of relationship that he's having with Minnie Driver. So he's trying to like kind of coach him through certain things as far as like about love, about life, about loss. And just to see his arc and to see how that relationship and how that culminates towards the end of the film in a beautiful moment, which is still probably one of my most favorite scenes, is when he's looking at Will Hunting's file and he sees the pictures of the markings on his body from when his stepfather abused him and stuff like that. And he looks at Will and he was like, he's like, all this shit here, he's like, it's not your fault. And he was like, yeah, I know. And he's like, he keeps repeating it. He's like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Man, that shit is real. I'm tearing up now. That shit is real. I had that moment with the therapist when I was in the psychiatric institute watching. Darren, it's not your fault.
And he keeps saying that. And it's almost like every time he's saying it, it's peeling a layer, like getting to the core of what the problem is. And Will Hunting, because he has this hard exterior core, and he's like, and the way Matt Damon plays this, where he's starting to tear up, and he's like, Sean, he's like, not you, Sean. He's like, don't do it, because he doesn't want to confront it. He doesn't want to confront, but he's just telling him, he's like, look, it's not your fault, and it's getting me emotional. It's just such a beautiful movie and a beautiful scene, and just those characters, man. It's to me, it's the greatest mentor-mentee relationship. Just because of everything that it involves, as far as like getting Will Hunting to realize the man that he can become, and how it shows Sean that he still has more life to live. And those are the ones that I like, is when they both can learn from each other, and those are the best relationships. So that's my number one.
All right, that's a great pick. I'm so guilty. I'll be the first to admit, when we have conversations about comedic actors, comedians who do dramatic roles, I almost always sleep on Robin Williams and Good Will Hunting, and that is my bad, because you're not lying. For somebody to just go from, that's like Jim Carrey, like being that on, because Robin Williams and Jim Carrey are on their own planets when they do when they're staying true to them and they're doing them.
Yeah.
So to be up there, those stratospheric heights, but then to be able to come down to human levels, because I can't relate to Jim Carrey acting like, I don't even know what your mind, what channel your brain is on right now to be able to do that. I love it, but I can't even relate to that.
Yeah.
But when they're able to come down to a level that I can relate to, I can relate to pain. I can relate to Jim Carrey's portrayal of pain and isolation in The Truman Show.
Yeah.
I can relate to Robin Williams' pain of loss and how to deal with the loss of your wife.
Yeah.
And how does that make you feel?
Yep.
I can relate to all of that shit. And the way that he does it, I'm so grateful it's in a way that is not distracting to the connection that I'm making with that character.
Exactly. And it just shows you how great of an actor Robin Williams truly was.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a great comedian where he was on 11 when he was doing his stand-ups and doing like some of those wacky films, Mork and Mindy.
Yeah.
But then he can do stuff where it's a very layered and nuanced performance, like Good Will Hunting, or like even something that Good Morning Vietnam, where it's still kind of comedic but dramatic as well. I mean, and he did that throughout his whole career, where people have always he's the reference to that when people talk about comedians wanting to have like a diverse filmography. Will Smith talked about that when he was starting to get into acting. He was like, I want my filmography to be like Robin Williams. I want to do everything. And Robin Williams embodied that. He embodied that type of career that people wanted because he could do it all. It's just amazing.
All right, great pick. Billy, your number one.
Man, that was such a good and serious conversation. I was gonna joke and put my pick as 50 Shades of Grey.
Do it.
Jamie
Do
Dornan,
it. Do it.
Cody
We need that.
I know. It's the force, man.
My pick is not nearly as tears-inducing, so you might as well bring it down.
Talk about weird positions of power and how the mentor has a whole lot of power over the mentee. No, I'm gonna go with. I'm actually gonna go with a Quentin Tarantino pick.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Django Unchained.
Oh man!
Is that what you're gonna do?
No, how did I not think of that though?
That's great. That's
between
awesome.
Dr. Schultz and
That's
how
awesome.
That's
awesome.
That's the pick.
Yeah.
Damn,
be the
that's
pick,
like the most. Goddamn, that's so obvious.
I know that is obvious.
What?
I didn't even think about that. That's
I can't be the disco door. I'm on punishment for a week. I can't even call myself disco door for a week. Cause
I mean, if I could go back to 50 Shades if you want.
No.
We recorded that shit. I just admitted it. God damn.
Django is good. Django's good.
I don't know. You know, I think the thing that I want to talk about with Schultz and Django's relationship.
Yeah.
Actually, it's because my joke about 50 Shades of Grey I think is just as applicable there. Like, Schultz is, I think he's very much a good actor. Mm-hmm. The character is a good actor. He has good intentions in what he's doing, right? And I think that he's very genuine. And I think that he, in good faith, imparts a tremendous amount of skill and knowledge to Django to help him in his pursuits. And I think that he's very sincere in doing that. But I think that underlying all of that, from the beginning of their relationship, is a willingness to exploit his position of power by waiting to sign over his papers to free him. And at the end, by not being able to control himself with Calvin Candy and let them all get out of there again, he has to have the last word. Yeah. And in both of those instances, he has a tremendous amount of power because of his relationship with Django and the way that it goes, and he uses it in the wrong way to go forward. And I think that there's a lot of room to have a conversation about his motives in that. I think there's a lot of room to have a conversation about whether or not he makes the right choice at the end of the movie to just go ahead and kill Calvin Candy. But regardless of where you come down on that, implicit in the relationship between mentor and mentee is a huge, tremendous power imbalance. And I think that Django Unchained doesn't get enough credit for the way that Quentin Tarantino works through that and portrays it on the screen to include the highs and the lows between those two characters.
Okay.
So I'm a big fan of the dynamics in that relationship that you get to see.
Okay.
Nobody's, Schultz isn't a perfect mentor. He's not a guy that just comes out of nowhere and is like, hey, here's all the skills that you need to go. Everything's great. And he rides off into the sunset and Django's everything. Schultz is a broken man, and he would have to be a broken man to be on the road as a bounty hunter for hire, willing to kill people and whatever it is that he needs to do. And I think that that's very much true to humanity and true to character for him to have those weaknesses and those inconsistencies between his principles and the active choices that he makes in his life. So,
great pick.
But, very similar for 50 Shades of Grey. Very similar.
Okay.
Just by this much.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. My number one, my Fistful of Mentors is...
It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.
It is the mentor-mentee relationship between Bruce Lee and his young pupil in the opening of Enter the Dragon. Because who doesn't want to be Bruce Lee's student? And as a kid seeing Enter the Dragon, seeing this young kid under the tutelage of Bruce Lee, I was always envious of that guy. And even then I knew, before that, never take your eyes off your opponent, even when you bow. Bruce Lee wouldn't have had to smack me in the head. Granted, I would have been looking at his finger because it's Bruce Lee's finger. But he wouldn't have had to smack me in the head. I wouldn't take my eyes off my opponent. Bruce Lee was
my first real life superhero. And for me, it was like, okay, you like Superman, that's your favorite superhero, but my superhero can really do the superhero shit. There's no guy who can really fly. Christopher Reeve can't really fly. My guy, he can really do the shit that he does in the movies. He really is a Superman. And there was that air of mystique over Bruce Lee, that because he was the greatest martial artist, or the most world-renowned, and because he was so prolific and philosophical, he was more than just a teacher. He was a student of the world. He was a student of other martial arts. He studied those other martial arts to find out, is there benefit in them, and the things that are good in them, can I incorporate that into my life, and into my life, can I push that out into my own martial arts style, into other people's lives? He wasn't just in front of the camera and then on red carpet and then in the gym in between movies. He was writing books about philosophy.
Yeah.
He was living those philosophies. He wasn't just trying to cash in. I got some star power. I'm going to write a book about some shit that sounds like I know what I'm talking about and get some money. He was living these things. He was imparting this wisdom on other people. He wanted to teach, and not just that pupil in that opening scene of Enter the Dragon. He wanted to teach Billy. He wanted to teach Brian. He wanted to teach me. He wanted all of us to learn, not just Jeet Kune Do and self-defense. His greatest teachings were, we're all under the same sun. We're all one family. Get along.
Yeah.
Help each other. Teach. Don't hold your knowledge to yourself. Don't restrict it just to Shaolin. Because if it's having you a good quality of life, why would you not want that for your fellow man?
Exactly.
That's the greatest wisdom right there. Like the greatest type of mentor who wants to teach everyone, no restrictions. I don't care if you're white, black. I don't care if you're Chinese, American. I don't care if you're male or female. If you want to learn how to be a good human being or a better person, come to my school. I will teach you. On top of that, you'll get to learn how to fuck somebody up too. So, to me, that's got to be my number one. Master Lee, Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
That's a good pick.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Goddamn, my dude, I'm staring at it right now.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for us, ladies and gentlemen. Hit us up on social media. Brad, just so you know, I thought about putting a mechanic on my
I
fistful.
thought about that too.
As a shout out to you. That's a dope, right? That's a dope mentor-mentee relationship. And I'm talking about the Charles Bronson one, yes.
Oh, okay.
And
I was
Vincent.
thinking about the remake.
Of course you were, Brian.
Statham and Ben Foster.
Of course you were, Brian.
Statham and Ben Foster,
Brad,
man.
I was with Bronson and friggin' Jan Michael Vincent, so just know that. So I hope that makes you feel good. You can hit us up on social media at ItModcast and let us know what your Fistful of Mentors are. There are a lot cinematically.
There
you
are.
see, we didn't even go like the Vader and
we
Anakin
didn't do Star Wars.
Yeah.
There's many of them in Star Wars.
There's a lot, even the newer films. So, but hit us up on social media and let us know what your top 5 are. In the meantime, you can follow MouthDork at MouthDork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd. I'm doing this backwards because they're not here, and I miss them, so I want to give them that. You can follow WifeDork at Sidewalk Siren on at Sidewalk Siren on Twitter, at Sidewalk Siren on Instagram. She's also at Baked Dork on Twitter and Instagram. And Brian is at The Turtle Dork on Twitter, at The Turtle Dork 1 on Instagram, and at Brian William Young on Facebook. And Indie Dork is at WB Das on Instagram and Twitter. And I'm Darren Smith on all social medias. That's going to do it for us. Go out to the movies. There's a bunch of shit out this weekend. You have a plethora of film to choose from. So go see those movies. What is our review cast? Oh man, we're going to be doing when we come back
Into the Spiderverse.
Into the Spiderverse. So get ready for a love fest.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay warm. And until next time.